get a job and fucking work on one thing you're super passionate about, work on that for 6 months. You're now going to be an expert on something.
Your mind controls everything. Success, failure, business, life. If you don't train it, you lose.
The most important thing for anyone is vision. It's what you're working towards.
And Tom Spark knows how to push limits and build a bulletproof mindset.
The best coaches, mentors, from my experience, are ones who kind of can hold mirrors up to you and reflect back to you what you already know yourself.
From sales to music, from education to coaching, this man has done it all.
And I was kind of just like a bit of a, like gun for hire sort of vibe. And I was just working with all sorts of people. If you don't have direction, what are you doing? You don't know what actions to take. You need the North Star.
There's a lot spoken nowadays, particularly in the business world by entrepreneurs, about the education system being broken.
I absolutely agree. You're not rewarded for the value you provide. You're rewarded for time served.
But you managed to escape or get out of it. How did you leave?
Darren invited me onto his podcast. I did the podcast with him and I was like, I like this. This is something I can get my teeth stuck into.
What, podcasting?
Podcasting and running that as a business. I know so many entrepreneurs who are close friends who get between like 150 to 200 views per video, and they're making anywhere between like 200, 300k a month.
If people haven't got a business, would you still advocate for them starting a podcast?
Yeah, I believe in the podcast businesses. As you know, I believe everyone should have a podcast business, and focused on scaling those shows.
And if you don't listen to this episode, you're setting yourself up to fail.
Guys, Matt Haycox here for another episode of No Bollocks with me, Matt Haycox, and it is a continuation of what we're now going to call the Barley Files. We're here. I think this is my fourth Barley podcast over the last week or so. It's the first one we've got with this beautiful tea setting. It's I feel like we're in a Thai séance. But Tom Sharp's in the house. I met Tom a couple of weeks ago at one of the masterminds I was doing over here, podcasting masterminds. But he is not just a podcasting mastermind himself. He's been in the music industry. He's a former educator. He's sales, marketing, and we're just talking about coaching, mindset too. And he's also on day 3 of his second round of 75 hard. So I wanted to get him down in front of the mic. Lots and lots we could talk about. So thanks a lot for being here, buddy.
Thank you for having me, man. I'm looking forward to this. It's going to be good.
I was going to say, talking 75 hard. So this is 30 hard. This is 75 hard. The rerun, is it?
This is the rerun. So
you'd have thought that they made the next one more troublesome than the first.
At least 76 hard. Yeah. I didn't even know about it. I did the 75 hard. Finished the end of the year really strong. And then, you unlock this new thing, and it's 30 hard, a few more tasks. So I thought, it's good to have a bit of structure, and enjoying it so far. In that ice bath, 5 minutes a day though, that's real.
That's one of the ones of 75, is it? Yeah.
Of the new one, it's 5 minutes cold shower or 5 minutes ice bath. I'm taking it because the showers aren't cold here in Bali. It's a lukewarm shower.
But the ice baths are there. I go to the ice bath over at not Fitness Factory, but a Body Factory.
Yeah.
And they've got 2 ice baths there. One of them, I want to say one's about 7 or 8 degrees, and one's like 3. And if you go in the 3 degree one first and then go in the 7 or 8 degree one afterwards, it literally feels like a bath. As if you'd have got in it first, you'd probably struggle a little bit, and then ultimately when you get out, you get out. If you go in it after the 3 degree one, I mean, you could just sit in there for hours.
Yeah.
So that's my ice bath trick to make.
Nice. Do you do any breath work with it beforehand?
I did breathwork once ever. I went on a Wim Hof course.
Good stuff.
And it wasn't Wim himself. It was like one of his appointed instructors over in Dubai. It was like a 1-day thing. It was a morning of breathwork and an afternoon of ice baths. Oh, it's an ice bath training and preparation to then do the ice bath. And I've never really been into meditation, breath work, yoga or anything like that, but it was all part of it, so I had to oblige. And what I did find staggering was what the benefit of the breath work was, not just in relaxation, but in the cleansing of the body. And to give the context to it, so I'd been out the night before, couple of bottles of wine and a load of fried Chinese. Rolled out of bed about 4 hours later to this breathwork session, and then the ice bath. And the first thing they do is they give us like a piece of pH tape to piss on to check our pH. And I forget, let's say, what the number was, but mine was showing, well, the most acidic in the class. I mean, I think everybody in there was, probably erring on the side of acidity, but mine was, flashing red lights after the wine and the Chinese. We lay down on the floor, do the breath work. I've never done it since, so I'll probably say it wrong, but I just basically remember being told to close my eyes, put my hands somewhere on myself, and breathe the way I was told to breathe by the guy. And I started to, first I'd be concentrating on it, then you kind of do it without needing to concentrate. And at some point I just nodded off. I mean, it was like, very, very relaxing. I woke up, to me it felt like hours and hours later, I think like 10 minutes into this, 15 minutes into it, gone and done a piss on another piece of pH stick, and I'd gone from acidity to alkaline. And the guy, you'll obviously be able to talk about it much better than me now, but I'd done, he explained how the breathing effectively circulates the blood and the whatever to get the toxins out of you. I mean, unbelievable.
Yeah, I think one of the biggest benefits there, right, is the breath work forces you to get into your body, because you obviously spoke about kind of like meditation, the mindset stuff. A lot of people, particularly entrepreneurs, they're kind of aware, like, oh, maybe I should meditate. I've heard that might be a good thing to do. But when you've got so much going on, your mind's racing. But the nice thing about the breath work is it forces you, it takes your mind out of the equation, forces you to just focus on the body. I think it's a nice practice for people with a lot on as well.
I mean, that's always been my thing with the meditation, that we were talking a bit just before we started recording. I've lived at such a high level of stress and pressure for so many years that I don't know, I've almost felt that anything other than continuing to keep the wheels turning is going to be something that's going to make the wheels fall off. When I've been stressed or overworked at times, people have gone like, you need a holiday or you should meditate. I always think, as nice as it sounds, if I certainly to take a holiday off and to take a holiday out and turn my phone off and stuff, to me seemed inconceivable, because I think if I go away for a week or 2 weeks, I'll come back to an even bigger disaster than when I've left. But even with the meditation and stuff, I've kind of sat there at times doing it, because I'm not saying I've never done it, and the whole time my mind is ticking over of like, fuck, when's this meditation going to finish? Because I've got to get back to my laptop, got to get back to my email.
Yeah, guided ones are really good to start, and it is like anything, it is a muscle. Practicing that kind of presence. Personally, I try and start the day with it. Even if it's just gratitude, listing 5 things that I'm grateful for. I have a tendency to go into overthinker mindset. I have a tendency to go into immediately thinking about my problems. But for me, the way that reframed it for me was thinking of it like a muscle. It was like, right, I've got to go to the gym. I've got to do it. And it does get easier to kind of stop those thoughts coming in. But yeah, there's very simple ones people can do. And I think just kind of like, even if you're attempting to do it, that's great. Like, that's all you need to do is just attempt it, and then you're making progress. And for me, yeah, I always say this to people, it's like 5 things you're grateful for in the last 24 hours. And it trains your brain to find more things that you're going to be grateful for today.
So talk to me about the gratitudes then, because again, it's something you hear about more lately, and people talk about writing the gratitudes and the when they're journaling, etc. And I've kind of almost had this thing that you think, well, what am I grateful for? I'm grateful for my kids, or grateful for certain people who've looked after me when I've needed looking after, or opportunities I've been given. But I kind of feel like I'd sit down to journal it and I'd just be writing the same stuff. I'm grateful for my kids. I mean, do you have to make a conscious effort not to repeat things? And then also, what's the ultimate benefit of doing it?
Yeah, it's a great question. So there's something, a journaling technique I prescribe often, and it's called where, how, thanks. Now, when you're doing the gratitude, it's often helpful to think of things that happened in the last 24 hours. And it could be things like, I really enjoyed that green tea that I had, that conversation I had with someone smiled at me. It could be really little, it could be big. I made 20K yesterday. Okay, awesome. I'm really grateful for that. What I find really, really helps, as, again, someone who has struggled to sit down and meditate and be zen, whatever that means, if you've got a piece of paper in front of you, write down 3 words. Write down where, write down how, and then write down thanks. And then in the morning, first thing, with your tea, whatever, write down where you're heading, what you're working on at the moment, and just whatever comes out. Don't judge it. I'm going over here. I need to do this. My body, I need to improve like this. Exercise. These are all the things I'm working on. That's kind of like your vision, the forward momentum. Next stage is how. right, how am I actually going to do that today? What's one thing that I'm going to do today that's going to move me towards that where? And then you kind of link the two. And then the final stage of that is the gratitude, is the thanks. Well, what do I have in my life currently that I'm grateful for? So let's say one of your wheres is, I'd like to have a six-pack, for example. Then your how is, well, I'm going to do an ab workout today, but my thanks is, I'm grateful that I'm in a position where, one, I can afford a nice gym, or two, I have legs that work and I can walk myself to the gym. It doesn't matter, it could be anything, but I find that's quite a nice way to focus the gratitude as well. So tie it to what you're working on, tie it to your actions today, and then kind of tie that sort of positive association and gratitude for the amount you do have in your life currently to the actions you're going to take today. And then that takes 5 minutes. Anyone can do that. You don't need to sit and meditate and put on some music and, look at Buddha or whatever. You can literally do that with an open page. And I find that's very good for focusing you on the day and getting into that state of being appreciative for what's going on.
Do you do journaling in general?
Yes.
And how does that differ from, let's say, gratitude journaling? And what are you actually... I mean, are there some, not rules, but let's say, are there some guidelines to journaling? Because again, I've got quite a few mates who do it. Not that I've ever really asked them, what it's all about. But sometimes I'll see them posting a picture of it on Instagram. They're sat down with a pen and a book. They're going, just sitting down to do my journaling. I mean, what do you write about, and what do you do with the books?
Yeah.
And I guess find a bit of context. I constantly write notes in my Apple Notes. As I'm always having thoughts, whether it's something we've talked about now I want to jot down, whether I'm in the sauna, whether I might be listening to a book or something. But I've got hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of Apple Notes. Is that like journaling?
Yeah, you're journaling.
Right.
Yeah, for me, that's all it is. It's just it's a way of getting what's in my head just out, and then kind of looking at it and being like, okay, this is what I'm thinking about at the moment. Again, it could be that I'm listening to a podcast, I'm listening to a book, and I want a little bit more focus rather than just kind of going about my day. It's like I'm going to have a book in front of me as I listen to this and just write down what's coming up. And then that practice that I spoke about, the where, how, thanks, that kind of comes in at various stages, well, every day, but in between all my ramblings. So my journal is a mess. It doesn't make any coherent sense. It's just random thoughts, but I find it helpful to put them together, and then you can see over time how your priorities shift. So there could be a thought that's reoccurring, and that kind of changes the vision or where section that you're doing daily. Like, this is important to me. This is a problem that keeps coming up. This is something that I'm actually I'm worried about, or this is something that hasn't fully expressed. And then you can you can just spot it. You can spot that the thought is actually important to you. So for me, like, journaling is just thoughts on a bit of paper, whatever's coming out, write. And then I also like to do if I'm struggling with something or a question or anything, I'll just write the question down. It could be to do with business, it could be to do with relationships. Why is this happening? I don't understand it. It's pissing me off. This sucks. And then I just write whatever comes out. So I try and take myself out of it. I'm like, I'm going to write a question and I'm just going to answer that question. And kind of like detach from it a little bit. And then you start writing things, you're like, that does make sense. I kind of do know the answers here. Okay, well, what about this? This is pissing me off. They shouldn't have done that, should they? Like, could be a relationship thing. I'm like, well, and I kind of use it like self-therapy as a way to kind of play devil's advocate with myself and, kind of like let my sort of emotions out. If something's pissing me off, I'll write it down. And I won't hold it back. It's not some pretty journal for anyone to read. Is for me. So I'll write down exactly what I'm feeling, exactly what's going on, what's pissing me off, what I'm working on, and then I'll just kind of like let myself write, almost as if I'm giving advice to myself, or if I was giving advice to someone like me. And I find you sometimes have some breakthroughs, and usually you will always have the answers. This is the thing with coaching. Like, a lot of coaches or a lot of mentors, whatever you want to call yourself, they have a bit of an ego of, I am a coach, therefore I am above you, I will tell you what to do and I will help you. Okay, that can be part of it. You've got to lead by example. But really, the best coaches, mentors, from my experience, are ones who kind of can hold mirrors up to you and reflect back to you what you already know yourself. Because when you believe that, when the answer comes from yourself and it comes out of a realization that you already have, that's more powerful. I could give you a book. I could tell you what to do. You're not really going to take action on it. But if you go through the mental process yourself and you come up with a solution, then you're going to actually act that out. So the journal, the kind of questioning things, that's a way of kind of doing that for myself. But then also that's kind of based out of some of the coaching stuff, some of the mentorship stuff, where it's really a process of just trying to reflect back what you already know and actually be honest and draw it out of yourself.
I mean, have you got dozens of these old journal books all stuck on a shelf somewhere then?
Yeah, they are. They come around with me. It's good to look back. You look back and you're like, oh, I was a mess. Right. Or, oh, yeah, fuck, I forgot I was dealing with that and I absolutely overcame that issue. And it's good to look back and kind of understand your mental state where you were, and then see the progress you've made. And I also say that to people as well. It's, we talk about journaling and all these things can be vices. They can get in the way. They can be very unnecessary. But one thing I always recommend is, along with kind of like your 5-year plan, have like a bank of wins. If you're ever having a low day, just write down all of the things you've achieved. It could be as simple all the way from when you were, I don't know, in school and like your soccer team or your football team won, whatever, all the way up to like educational achievements, and then things you're proud of, things you've done inside a business, and just add to that list of wins. Whenever you have a big win, list to it, add to the list, and then just go over it. Every now and then, just look at it. If you're having a bit of down, don't be like, oh shit, I've achieved a lot of stuff. Good for me. And then it kind of can re-energize you to remember, the things you have done.
Let me hit you with a mad stat. You are probably not subscribed. Seriously, 58% of the people who listen to this podcast every single week do not hit that subscribe button. That is more than half of you. So let's fix this right now. The goal here is super simple. We grow the podcast, we bring in bigger guests, and we give you even more no bullshit, actionable insights to level up your business and to level up your life. Now, in business, you set SMART goals. That's specific, measurable, achievable, relevant, and time-bound. Well, here's one for you. Let's get that 58% down to well below 50% in the next 3 months. So please do me a quick favor. If this podcast has ever given you one good idea, one piece of advice that's helped you or helped your business, then hit that subscribe button. It takes a second, it costs nothing, and it means that I can keep bringing you even bigger and better guests, giving you even bigger and better insights. Go on, do it now. I'll wait. Done? Perfect. Great choice. Let's grow this together.
How long ago did you start journaling?
Probably, I've been doing it for a while. Always would like to just write things down, but the more kind of structured approach, maybe about 2-3 years.
And what particular outcomes or successes can you attribute to it?
I think it's clarity on direction and clarity on action throughout the day. So the most important thing for anyone is vision. It's what you're working towards. Any business, any entrepreneur, any artist, thank you so much, it's vision. Is where am I heading? If you don't have direction, what are you doing? You don't know what actions to take. You need the North Star. So what I often say to people, and I think we'd like discuss some of this at the mastermind as well, is people get overly attached to the how they're going to do things. They can spend endless hours on YouTube looking at new techniques, new business models, new mindset things like, should I journal, should I meditate, and they get obsessed with how I'm going to do something. So I think every day writing down where, which is your vision, what am I working towards? Me, truly, like forget anyone else's voices. Me, what do I want? What do I want to create? I write that down every day, and then extrapolating from that, well, how am I going to do it? It just gives you clarity throughout the day. And then your actions over time compound, and then you shift your identity, you shift your life slowly, slowly, slowly. So for me, it's just an immediate way, connect to vision, connect to direction. It's like the compass. And then how do you turn that into action? Because that's how we actually do things. I think a lot of you'll experience it here in Bali, like the woo-woo sort of spiritual side of things. It's great. It feels good to think of all these, like, I could be this and I'm unstoppable. And yeah, that's awesome. How are you going to solidify that into your life through action? And we say you've got to have the woo, but then you've got to have the do as well. And the do is the hard part that a lot of people don't want to do because it's uncomfortable, right? So for me, it's a great way of linking those two things, vision and action immediately linked. And then I have a good direction for my day.
So I said at the beginning, you used to be an educator. You were a secondary school teacher.
Mm-hmm.
How did you get into that? I mean, is that something you'd always wanted to do?
Both my parents were teachers.
Right.
Mum was head of kind of like you can think of it as an international school in Cyprus. I had a very comfortable life growing up. I was never went without as a child. I was very blessed by my family. Basically, I was working hard to get into the music career. I had some success where I grew up in Cyprus inside of the music career. I was making a decent amount of money, and then I moved back to the UK to go to university, and I found it hard to break into the music scene again there. I didn't have a network, and I didn't really understand it. It was very different from the Cyprus music scene, and I was struggling to break into it. I was working hard, but I wasn't making money out of the music scene. So they have that famous saying, those who do, or those who can do, those who can't teach.
Yep.
Because I hadn't, and no shade to teachers at all, it's a hard job, but I was like, okay, well, my parents were teachers, it's kind of all I know. I guess I'll just go into education while I'm still working on my goal to really solidify my position in the music career.
And this was in England or in Cyprus?
This was in Wales, yeah,
right.
in Cardiff. So I got into education, and it's a strange choice for a side job to keep you ticking over, because it's very all-encompassing. But I'm so grateful I did it. I learned so much.
What subjects were you teaching?
So it was kind of like creative media, a bit of music, and then as a secondary school teacher, you're kind of responsible for called PSHE sort of stuff, like the general well-being stuff. You'd have form groups as well, etc. You end up teaching all sorts, doing kind of like supply work because there's a serious lack of teachers in the UK, so you end up just kind of covering all bases. And you realize, like, once you know how to teach, you can actually kind of teach anything. There's a big belief that I learned from one of the mentors I had when I was going through education. I really respected this guy, and he had a great saying, and I've taken this into all of my coaching, any kind of like mastermind work we do. And he said, every time you walk into a room, whether it's a classroom, wherever it is, you're doing a speech, you have to hold the belief that the knowledge is already in the room. The knowledge is already in the room, and your job is to pull it out of people. Your job is not to necessarily just broadcast, even though there's a time and a place for that. Sometimes that is necessary. But really, for like real education, you have to believe that the knowledge is already in the room. So I would use it as a challenge during secondary school. I'd come in, I'd know what the topic was, come into a classroom, and I would think, I'm not going to tell these kids or these teenagers anything. It has to come from them. And then what that makes you good at is it makes you very, very particular with your questions, and kind of pairing kids off with each other, and getting ideas to fight. And you have some really nice breakthroughs when you can do something like that, and you can kind of control the room like that. And that for me was one skill that I never thought I knew about, but it's been really, really powerful for all of the work that I've done moving forward. Is the knowledge is already in the room. It is your job just to extract it and then to reflect it back. And then you're kind of teaching the kids to be self-learners. You're irrelevant, because if the kids and someone you're mentoring, if they require you to lean upon for whatever it is they're going to do forward, they're going to fall flat when you leave. So you have to teach them to be kind of self-questioners, self-learners, and to be able to pull it out of themselves. And that's when you actually really create independent learners. And that's something that, if you're a coach, if you're in charge of a team in any capacity, that is something that I think everyone should kind of strive for. It makes a huge difference.
There's a lot spoken nowadays, particularly in the business world, by entrepreneurs about the education system being broken, and I guess about it being created solely to make sheep, and many different, let's say, variations on a theme of brokenness. As someone who was inside it, what did it feel like to you? And I guess are your views different now than they were then, or then than before you actually went into education as a sector? Yeah,
it's an unbelievable question, and I think it's nuanced, right? So a lot of kind of the entrepreneurial space are like, school was irrelevant, it taught me nothing. It taught you what you didn't like, so it maybe pushed you to become an entrepreneur perhaps. I absolutely agree, and I actually completely agree that it's set up in a way to create sheep, to create good workers. And I also think on kind of like a more energetic level as well, teachers are in very much a scarcity mindset. It is not a well-paid job initially at all. If you are in a kind of scarcity and lacking mindset, and you're spending time with 30 kids in front of you, you're going to transmute that down to them as well. So it keeps people in a scarcity mindset, which keeps them controllable. Also, I believe, like, the way it's set up is you're not rewarded for the value you provide. You're rewarded for time served. So your pay increases each year, whether there's some targets you need to hit, but you hit them, as long as you're not like a potato, you hit them. So if you've been in there 10 years, you are rewarded not for the value you've provided, you're rewarded for just staying in the game. So what you end up finding is that there's just the people who actually survive are just the ones who just stayed long term. And it wasn't because of the value they provided. And I found frustrating. Maybe some other people have had this experience. And I know that education has this problem that most new teachers leave the profession within 3 years. I'm part of that statistic. And it's because you come in, bushy-tailed, bright-eyed, with all these ideas, I'm going to change the world, we'll work together and we'll make this great for the kids. It's soon stamped out of you because, one, the people there don't necessarily want to change, even though they probably came in a similar kind of mindset. And yeah, you just feel, for me, I just felt very alone very, very quickly. It wasn't conducive to my own personal growth, and therefore I lost inspiration.
Most business advice, it's motivational fluff. It's empty promises and it's untested ideas by people who have never even tried to apply them. It's bollocks, but you're not going to get that here. And that is why I call it No Bollocks. The No Bollocks newsletter is straight talking, high impact, zero time wasting, tried, tested, and immediately actionable. 2 emails a week, insider strategies, brutally honest insights, and the answers to the questions that you're asking, or you should be asking. And the best part, you're going to learn more in 10 minutes than most people learn in a 3-year MBA. Over 20,000 people a week are already in. So don't be the one that's missing out. Hit the link in the show notes because you just need one email that could be the one that changes everything.
When you say the people there don't want to change, even if they did want to change, what could they actually do about it? Because I assume they're following a curriculum, they're in a set of rules.
So, with everything I'm saying, there are some phenomenal teachers, who deeply care about the kids. And you have to remember with these comprehensive schools, people come from maybe more middle class families and, they've had their hair brushed and they brushed their teeth this morning. There's also people who slept on a dirty bed sheet and their mum's on heroin and, there's 6 kids she has. And you have all of these people together in a classroom. It's a very difficult environment to manage. And there's some teachers who they do real sacrificial, and it's a great service they do. And it's more, for me, it's a lot, the teachers I really respect. Yes, they can be excellent educators, but it's the ones who really care about the kids because it's hard work. It's hard work. In terms of your question, what can they actually do about it? What they can do on an individual level is actually care about the kids. But in terms of the curriculum that is given to you, you have no say. Unless you spend time in the system, working your way up, maybe you've gone all the way to head or deputy head, then you get taken onto one of the educational boards. By that time, you've been in the system 15 years, you're indoctrinated. You can't see out of it. And likely, you went from primary school to high school to university, you did your PGC, and then you got back into the education system. You can't see anything else. You haven't been in industry at all. So your idea of what's going to be beneficial is very kind of beneficial for the kids. It's a very, very narrow perspective of what is actually going to be beneficial for them. I spoke on a podcast the other week about we kind of measure people on IQ, but we don't teach EQ, which is the emotional intelligence side of things. It's just not really considered in the curriculum.
What would that mean exactly? What is emotional intelligence?
Yeah, well, it's hey, you're a teenager now, and you have all of this kind of hormones and all of this stuff cropping up. It's right, how do we deal with that? How do we transmute it? How do you express it? Whereas basically what's happening in the classrooms is, and again, how it's set up, there's maybe 5 or 6 periods a day. Imagine you were working on a project. You would probably want to kind of break that out throughout a week, let's say, and you're going to do maybe a few 2-hour blocks here a day. It's going to be your main focus for the week, and that's what's actually going to get you progress, is because you've focused on that one thing. If you come into an environment where they say, hey, you're going to learn Pythagoras for an hour, and then next you need to do drama, and you need to be on all expressive, and now you need to go into learning Shakespeare, your poor mind is being taken all over the place. That's not focused learning. It's very scattered, which is why a lot of the kids, despite perhaps good lessons and good teachers, they're not focused on their learning. They're focused on the other things that are consistent. Their friend who's with them every class. They're more concerned about the ongoing joke they have, or who is going to hit who at break time, or who's going out with so-and-so. That's the thing they're focused on because that's what's consistent. And then we then have this system where it's set up where your learning is very inconsistent, it's very scattered. So in terms of the EQ, I think schools think they're implementing a lot of that. but it's very kind of like surface level stuff. And I remember, again, without kind of calling out names and things, but I remember we had a head of like health and well-being for the school. Lovely person, completely overweight, you know. But this is the thing with that's fine, you know, but it's not leading by example, you know. And I think also thinking about emotional intelligence, a lot of teachers, they're very stressed, they have their own families, they're not getting enough sleep, the work outside of the classroom takes up so much time, they're not prioritizing their own well-being. And again, you can't give to others that which you haven't already given to yourself. So if you're not giving it to yourself, how are you going to pass that down, good habits, good behaviors, onto the kids? You're probably not. They're going to pick up that energy, that stressed, frantic energy from you, and yeah, you're creating more workers, you're creating lots of stressed little beings running around.
How long ago did you finish in education?
Maybe 6 or 7 years ago now.
Okay, well,
yeah.
And because there's a lot that gets spoken about now about the wokeness that's gone into schools, and you know the inappropriate sexual stuff that's taught to the youngsters and stuff. I mean, I read a lot about it. Although when I myself ask anyone, I've never had anyone be able to verify that anything's happened in their schools. I mean, have you got any first-hand knowledge of any of this?
Yeah, so when I was in education, absolutely. It was creeping in. I think it's a lot worse now, but it was creeping in. And I remember, I've got loads of stories on this. I remember we had a kind of like a mental health person come in and do some, like it was like a 6-week training that staff members could be involved with. And it was how to spot certain mental disorders, suicidal thoughts, all of this, and how to kind of, be a mental health person in school. It had some shitty name. And then I remember asking this person, because we were talking about various disorders, and I was asking about kind of like the trans identity thing. I was like, which is called, I'm going to forget the word now, but it's called, it has a disorder name. It's when you associate yourself as a different gender. Right. Like there's a medical term for it. It's escaping me now, but it's like gender dysphoria. So I said, because they basically taught us, if you spot any of these things, if you spot these suicidal kind of traits, you need to report this because we're going to categorize this person with this mental thing. If you spot this, categorize as this thing. So I said, well, I've spotted X, X, and X, and I would categorize that as then the gender dysphoria. So what should we do about that? Because this person thinks they're someone they're not. Oh, no, that's different. That one's different. And I remember asking that question, and the other teachers in the room triggered. I was like, okay, well, this is interesting. We have a medical disorder that we're now making an exception for one of them. Interesting. And look, I initially kind of came into education, I wouldn't say liberal or conservative, but I came out of university. I had kind of more idealistic views, let's say. But I remember the kind of trans thing coming in, and I remember just being so I just couldn't understand it logically. And again, this isn't from a point of like clickbaity, like, hey, yeah, isn't that stupid? A little bit, but it's from a point of view like what we're actually trying to achieve here. So the example like I like to give, if someone had schizophrenia, and they were like, I can hear voices, we wouldn't go, yes, you can. They're real. Those voices are real. When someone says, hey, I think I'm a boy, even though biologically they're a girl, we go, yeah, that's right. Why are we doing that? We wouldn't do that with any other mental disorder or mental health issue. Yet with this one, it was being permeated in. We were having trainings on it, and it was coming through. And then. And again, this doesn't come out of this shouldn't come out of a place of like being against something. This comes out of a place of caring for the well-being of the kids. So this is what I would notice. A kid would come up and they'd say, oh, I think I'm X, Y, and Z. Because it was kind of a hot new topic, no one really knew what to say. Parents, everything, okay, we're going to be so supportive. Oh, the school's going to support. That kid would then disappear for 6 weeks because they would go home and they would like deal with it. Maybe they get some counselling, whatever, I don't know. Then they would come back as, right, it's not Sarah anymore. Class, we want to introduce you to John. This kid who is 13, 14 years old, who is already going through the whole teenage thing of like, I don't fit in, I'm different from everybody else. You are now reaffirming that identity through everything around them. We are now playing into their distortion of reality. So they come back into the classroom, they're nervous because they're like dressed up as the opposite gender. So they're obviously nervous, and they're a kid, and all the other adults have been like, yeah, that's right, you are. The kids, I have to say, the kids deal with it better than the adults. The kids are like, oh yeah, okay, we'll be supportive. But if you go back to what is the underlying belief there? The underlying belief of that kid is something is wrong with me, I cannot be accepted as I am. And then rather than people saying, there's nothing wrong with you and you can be accepted for who you are, we've gone, yes, you're right, there is something wrong with you and you cannot be accepted as you are. They come back into the classroom and now we all play into that distortion. We all agree, we all call them the new name. And it's not from a place of, I'm not angry at the kid, but I'm angry at the short-sightedness that this thing has been that has been permeated here, because it's dangerous for these kids. There's a reason that trans suicide rate is really, really high. And forget like what you think about, is it silly? Like, okay, these are real people who are suffering from something, and we've played into their distortion of reality and told them that it's objectively true, and then we wonder why they are confused about how they perceive the world. And that's what I noticed. These kids would come in and they were just so confused and so anxious, and you would talk to them and they could see in your eyes that you're almost like treading on eggshells because you're being careful. All right, did I use the right thing? Because again, it's not, some people come in very guns blazing. They're like, well, I won't do that, and I'm just going to keep calling him a he. It's a kid. Treat the kid with respect. Don't take your anger out at the kid. Take it out at like this whole kind of system and what's being permeated here. So yeah, I really noticed that, and I could see that, and I was like, this is wrong. And then another thing, I've got a few stories here. I had a friend who was a great friend. He was an unbelievable teacher. He was head of year, so he was in charge of like the well-being. If there's anything to do with the police, if there's anything to do with their parents, he was in charge of that. He said throughout his time, and he'd only been in education maybe 6 years or so, fantastic guy, loving guy, really cared about the kids. He was saying at break times, like, I used to deal with like the two boys who'd been fighting with each other. I used to deal with the girls who'd like, they were being really bitchy to each other and they were calling each other a slag. Okay, now I'm dealing with a 12-year-old coming in who's unclear whether she's asexual or non-binary. And now all her friends are around her crying. And then I know tomorrow her friend who was here is going to be in my office with the same thing going, am I asexual or am I non-binary? Okay, forget, like, I'm not saying what, my beliefs here are not important, but as a reflection to hold that up and say, is this what we want our kids focused on? When they're 12 years old, when they're 13 years old, is like worried if they're asexual or this or that or whatever? Or do we want them running around, kicking each other, snogging each other, falling around, getting dirty, playing football, like, gossiping about like the boys they like? We're robbing them of kind of, that real authentic childhood, because we're kind of pressing on this thing that, this kind of distortion. So yeah, the wokeness, it was coming through, but the issue for why it's coming through is the fear of teachers and the fear of people higher up in the education system who wouldn't put their foot down and say no.
So that was going to be my next question, to say that, well, it's all very well these outsiders coming in to to teach you guys on it, but ultimately it is the teachers, I mean, presumably starting with the head down, that is accepting of the fact that, I'm going to learn this and I'm going to go and implement it. I assume if the entire school said fuck off, either we're not listening or okay, we're going to listen, but we're going to go and completely ignore it. It would have been a different story. But I mean, these were presumably sensible, educated teachers who yesterday knew that a boy was a boy, but today are happy to put those beliefs aside because they've been told by some government agency to go and let them be called a girl.
Yeah, and I think also, like, to kind of give compassion to everyone at every stage here, teachers are fucking busy and they're exhausted, and then when something comes through and then you kind of take it at face value. Like a new training comes through, you haven't often got the time, if you're a head teacher, you haven't got the time to question it. And I'm not saying that's good or healthy, but it kind of just comes through and you're like, right, well, who can I allocate this to? How can we make this happen? The question isn't about questioning. You kind of take that for granted. You take it at face value. You don't question its validity. And your mind is already on, right, how do we implement this into our curriculum? And it's not necessarily that they are sort of oblivious people, it's just they are so busy. They have their kids to worry about. They are barely getting any sleep. And so when these things come in, and this is why I said I think the education system is set up in the way it is, teachers are overworked and underpaid, is because it keeps you in a state of worry, it keeps you in a state of fear. And then when something comes in, you don't have the fucking energy to question it. Even if you do, you're like, am I going to lose my job over this? I don't do anything else. I can't go into industry. I've been in this industry for 25 years now. Okay, right, this is what we're doing. And that's why I think from the ground up, teachers, they're kept in scarcity. They're kept with that little bit of bait. Oh, you're going to get an extra grand if you're here for another 3 years. Oh, okay. And then you work your way up. And the other way it's set up with the unions as well, like it's changing a bit now, I believe. But once you hit a certain position, unless there's real negligence, you just hold that position. So you have all these roadblocks as a teacher. If you want promotions, there's just people sitting in these positions and they're like, I got 10 more years till I retire, I'm going to sit in this position. So yeah, to answer your question, I believe like the system is kind of deliberately set up like that in order to keep teachers controllable. But I don't think teachers are bad people. I think they're people with good intentions. They're just overworked, tired, and don't have the capacity to necessarily apply any critical thinking to things that come through.
But you managed to escape, or get out of it, depending which choice of word we use. So how did you leave? And then I think from memory, you started doing some online business, doing some Facebook ads and things.
Yeah. So my first business, I didn't even know I'd started a business. So like I said, my passion, my heart was always in music. I then, during the lockdowns, obviously had a bit more time. We were teaching from home, which was utter bullshit. But basically I was like, I've got some time to really focus in on my music career. And at the time it was electronic music. It was the electronic dance scene. I just started like a record label as well. It was starting to get a little bit of traction. And I was a very good music producer. I've been producing music for a long time. I've made classical scores. I've made all sorts of stuff from everything. I studied at a university as well, did a master's degree in it. I was a very, very good music producer and had a very good ear for music. And I was kind of applying that to sort of house music and kind of electronic dance music at the time. So I started releasing a few tracks on labels. And then I just basically put out on my Instagram, I had a different Instagram account at the time, and I just said, hey, if you'd like some live streams of me like making beats or like talking about how to, distort your bass, like you can have access to that. And I think I charge like $29 or $39 a month. And I put it on a Patreon group, and I'm pretty sure I hosted the videos on a private Instagram account. I had no idea of infrastructure, no idea of sales or marketing. And then I had a bunch of people sign up. And then immediately within like 2 months, I was on almost double my teacher salary from 1 hour video a week. And that for me was like a real kind of breakthrough moment of like, what am I doing here? So I kind of doubled down on that for a little bit. I started just putting out more videos. I kind of learned a little bit about sales and marketing, about how to position it. But luckily, and I always say this to clients we have, because I was really good at what I did anyway, my sales and marketing kind of spoke for themselves. I didn't have to worry about any sort of sales tactics or marketing tactics per se, apart from getting the good information in front of people, and people could see what good information is, and then they take action on that. So that went really well. I then started working with a company called SynthoHub, and I was head of education there for a while, and that was also a music production teaching platform. Learned a lot about online business there. And then at the same time, I took on some clients in the music industry as well, doing some other things around some of the stuff I'd learned on marketing, branding, and then gradually moved into some mindset coaching work. And I was kind of just like a bit of a, like gun for hire sort of vibe. And I was just working with all sorts of people in the music industry, understood it at every level, all the way from releasing music to kind of like coaching artists on mindset and their own kind of mental health. And that was kind of my exit ticket out of education a few years ago, and haven't been back since.
And what does business look like for you now then? Because I mean, obviously we're here in Bali. When did you get here? When did you? I guess how did you transition? Picking up on the words from earlier. How did you transition from, let's say, I don't want to use the words messing around in business, but let's say unstructuredly trying things that made you more money than your teacher's salary, to having the formality of the roles in the business that you have today?
Yeah, fantastic question. So the answer is I made a lot of mistakes and consistently. But I had the attitude that I was learning each time. So the real transition for me was from kind of moving out of all of these things I was doing, the mindset coaching, all the way to kind of like sales and marketing stuff, working as head of education. I was like, right, I think I'm a pretty good coach. I can help people like build their own thing. If someone is a music producer, and I worked with a lot of creatives initially, and I was like, if you have a creative endeavor and you would like to go full time with that and make money out of that, I can help you set that up. I've done it myself. I've done it for other companies. And also I've worked a lot on the mindset stuff necessary in order for you to kind of transform into a new identity and actually believe that you can do it and take action on the things. So I put together my first offer that was essentially a make money online offer, how to kind of turn your expertise through education into a full-time business. It went pretty well. Really interestingly, I scaled it up quite nicely. Within I set up it very, very formally. I had kind of team members, things were going well, content was coming out nicely, and I completely self-sabotaged. So after maybe 6 or 7 months of running it, I was not, the money that was coming in, I couldn't hold it. I couldn't hold it mentally. I was spending it all, getting rid of it. I was feeling imposter syndrome. I was looking at other people in the space and I was thinking, right, they're doing these numbers, like who am I? Because I came into the business space not really knowing much about that scene. I came in from the music scene, right? And then, so I felt confident in there. Then when I entered this new scene, the online business space, whatever you want to call it, I had all of this imposter syndrome and I self-sabotaged that business, went to zero completely.
What were you spending on?
Anything.
Just personal rampant spending.
Personal rampant spending, traveling, just the money was coming in and just going out. Like there was no kind of wealth management concepts. But again, at the time, it was quite a painful lesson. But hey, we pay for our education with time or money, and I used both. So I was really grateful for that lesson. However, during that time, I had learned a lot of valuable skills. So during my transition period, I took on a few clients on retainer, and I was like, right, I just need to chill now while I kind of figure out what to do. And that's when I kind of met Darren. Darren invited me onto his podcast. I did the podcast with him, and I was like, I like this. This is something I can get my teeth stuck into.
What, podcasting?
Podcasting and running that as a business. How to make money from a podcast, how to build a podcast as an asset. As you know, it's just one of the most incredible assets you can ever have. And it kind of fulfilled that sort of creative desire to work and speak with people. And I thought it was something that would enable my growth as well. And this is something I often say to people, and I think we spoke about this at the market mastermind. A lot of people on the online space, when you focus on your business, important. If you're marketing it online, remember that that's all you're going to talk about. And people actually miss this step a lot. If you're trying to promote your business online, you're going to be talking about your business. And then what I find is if people's heart isn't in the business they're running, or, they kind of made it for the wrong reasons, they don't come across well online because they don't fully believe it. People are like, snake oil, and then they don't have the success online. So what I always say is, okay, yes, you need to have a viable business, but also what you need to do is you need to think about what content do you feel comfortable producing and putting out over a long period of time that you're never going to get tired of, which is a hard question to ask. Then, does your business also align with that? Because if you want to, get eyeballs, get traffic to your business through online marketing, you're going to have to kind of talk about aspects of that. So if there's any shame or there's anything about your business that you wouldn't want to share, you need to figure that out first because you're going to be talking about it for a long time. So you need to figure that out. Kind of got into the podcasting, absolutely loved it, launched my podcast maybe 18 months ago now, learned a lot from Darren, how to do it, and then kind of slowly dropped off the clients that I had, and then kind of, much more associated with Darren now, with what we're doing there. And I believe in the podcast businesses. As you know, I believe everyone should have a podcast business, and focused on scaling those shows.
What do you see as the direct benefit of your podcast?
It's network is huge. Freedom to, again, if you're making content online, which we all know we have to do now, it's like this unwritten rule. It's like, okay, if you have a business, you've got to make content. Great. You have an option to just talk to a camera. Okay, some people like that. But for me, podcasting is this way for other people to really get to know you for who you are, because they don't only experience you through what you're presenting on camera, like, hey, look at me, like lots of ka-ching money sound effects on my video. You get to experience me through the lens of another person. And
how you interact with that person, how you ask questions.
You can't hide. You can't hide. So for me, it's a brilliant filter mechanism as well to see who's really about it, who is who they say they are. And for me, that's what I'm interested in. I'm also interested in connecting with people. I'm interested in the other aspects, the personal sides of what makes a good entrepreneur as well. You know, podcasts enable you to kind of cover a whole wide variety, a whole scope of things. And for me, the benefits have really been just reigniting love for what it is that I'm doing. Just connecting with people who I'm genuinely curious to talk to and learn. I've kind of created like a little flywheel where you get paid to learn.
If people haven't got a business, if people haven't got, let's say, a product that they would sell, or an offer that they would sell from the podcast, would you still advocate for them starting a podcast and building an audience?
Yeah, absolutely. So my first podcast, but this is before I met Darren, it was my first day I flew to Thailand, went to some kind of, it's called like Selina Resort Hostel thing, and it's for nomads. I met someone who was like a business / mindset coach or something. I was like, hey, I think that I want to do a podcast. And he was like, okay, cool. I was like, do you want to do it now? I had 2 little DJI mics like we're wearing now. I stuck one on my cap and one on his sunglasses. I set the camera up, not even landscape. I set it up portrait, filmed in horrible lighting, and we just spoke for half an hour. And I did have the offer at the time, but it wasn't directly pointing people towards that. It was just a way for me to express things I was curious about, to express my values, and hopefully for people to maybe learn something or to realize that they liked how I thought about things. So one of a great sort of quote is, the path illuminates as you walk it. And I think a podcast, if you're not sure what exactly it is you want to do at the moment, have a podcast, talk about your interests. You do have some interests that are kind of nicheable, let's say. You know, you're probably not so broad that you're here, there and everywhere, but maybe you don't see it. So talk about it. Speak to the people you're interested in. Speak to your friends if you have to. Put it out there. See what feedback you get. Hey, this is really interesting. Hey, it really helped me with this. Oh, it seems like I'm getting feedback now that lots of people find it really helpful when I talk about X. Could I formalize that into a system where I help people achieve X result? Probably. And it's a much more natural way of kind of discovering your business rather than thinking, I'm going to build an offer. I don't know if anyone likes it. Lead with value, lead with the conversations, see what feedback you get, and then position an offer around that. That would be my advice to someone who doesn't have a business at the moment.
You mentioned niche a couple of times just then, and obviously one of the things I've heard a lot since meeting you and Darren is the niching down of your podcast, you know, that specificity of what you do. I mean, talk to me about the difference between being niched in an area and being broad, you know, having a good podcast, good guest, but broad, versus a real niche on a particular subject.
Yeah, so I've got a few thoughts here, and this is a one which everyone loves to speak about on the online space. So thoughts here are, there's a few trains of thoughts. Again, if you already have an existing business and it's doing well and you're now going to use a podcast to get more eyeballs towards that business, you already know what your niche is. Okay, so you already know what you're going to talk about. Perfect. Talk about that, become the best at that. Don't worry about views, because you're just using it as a way to talk to the right people and direct traffic to your existing business that you're passionate about. Great, done. However, if you're in a bit of a different stage, there's this whole kind of saying of like, you are the niche, and it's kind of thrown around. So the way that I like to interpret that is, your niche is your vibe. Your niche is how you leave people feeling. Don't worry about and again, always use Joe Rogan as the example. He's into martial arts, he's into like gorillas, he's into psychedelics, but it's this beautiful mixed concoction that when you experience one of his podcasts, you're kind of left with a feeling, and it has a taste, it has a vibe. That's his niche. It doesn't need to be like, you don't need to have the sentence like, Joe Rogan is a podcaster in the X niche. No, he is the niche. That's fine. The vibe, what you get is what you feel. So again, with like this niche thing, again, if you have a business, you know what your niche is, speak about that. If you're kind of worried about it and you've got all these issues of like, well, what's my niche? I need to have like a tag. Just talk, see what your interests. You already have interests. You are the niche here. Again, it will be reflected back to you, the type of people you draw in. You don't need to worry about that one-liner. A lot of people get caught up on that. A lot of people we work with as well, they get caught up on the one-liner, and it really holds them back. It's generate out of a place, from inspiration, from passion, from being earnest, output, see what comes back, and you'll be surprised.
And one of the things you say, don't worry about the views, because if you're talking to your niche, then that audience is fine. But I mean, what's the limit on not worrying about the views? I mean, if you're doing it for 3 people, I mean, there's got to be a balance between being niche enough and also making sure that there is some way to monetize this.
Yeah, 100%. So that idea that like, oh, there's only 3 people watching my podcast, that means you've got some work to do. And again, like it could be things. It's like, oh, is my SEO good? Like my thumbnails, my click-through rate, all of this stuff. Okay, yeah, you can optimize, but then that's probably going to point to, if you're only getting 3 views, maybe there's a question of like, do I need to actually like work on some skills first before I start kind of like broadcasting all of this sort of stuff? I believe anyone can get started doing anything, but you've got to first have that belief that, I have something valuable to put out, and maybe have that conversation with yourself. And if you feel like you don't, okay, work on something. If you get a job and fucking work on one thing you're super passionate about, work on that for 6 months, you're now going to be an expert on something. And now you can talk about that. And if you get the titles right, you position it as education, people will search for that, and you will start generating the right kind of views.
But in terms of being able to make money, while 3 views isn't enough, hundreds is. You don't need tens of thousands and millions.
100%. And this was a big belief breaker for me, and something I still kind of get caught up in as well. Is like, why didn't that go viral? That would have been nice. But I know so many entrepreneurs who are close friends who get between like 150 to 200 views per video, and they're making anywhere between like 200, 300k a month because they're talking to the right people. And again, there's various strategies you can use. Obviously, you need to leverage short form content, get the right people in. Maybe you're running ads as well. There's all of this stuff that kind of plays into the ecosystem.
And sorry to interrupt, but I think that's a kind of another interesting point to go deep when we say plays into the ecosystem, because to me it sounds inconceivable. I mean, okay, yes, 150 to 200 people could, I guess, produce a couple $100,000 a month. I don't know. In my mind, that may be once or twice, but unless you're going to milk the life out of them, and unless it becomes a different 150 people. But then you mentioned ecosystem about paid ads or whatever. So is this the podcast playing into a bigger picture then? Because I mean, if you literally had no other channels whatsoever, and we're only getting 150 to 200 views on a podcast, would it be realistic that you'd be making as much money then?
Absolutely not. Right. Yeah, 100%. So it's got to play into that ecosystem where it's like, I always say like pick YouTube because it's the best for organic growth. Then pick a short form content. If you're on LinkedIn, you've probably already got a bit of a following. If you're on Instagram, you've probably already got a bit of a following. Leverage that. And then again, it's positioning, building the right offer, making sure you're charging enough for your offer. But then it's using the podcast and other videos that you produce as a sales asset as well. Which is why you need to be kind of like really considered with like how you're approaching, if you have a business on the back end, how you approach certain things, how you talk about certain things has to be considered. We spoke a lot about origin story. That's a very powerful asset to allow people to get to know you, trust you, and then also kind of direct people down into either like an email list, whatever it is. And again, the ecosystem's different for everyone, but just having the podcast on its own with no structure around it, you're gonna struggle.
And what does the future hold for you? I mean, I assume coming to Bali was probably not a planned activity. Most people seem to come here for a week and end up staying for months or years on end. Yep. But you think you're here for the long term, or you're going to be travelling around? Yeah,
we'll be here for a good few more years, and we're going to push the show. Already got some great guests lined up, and it's just having those conversations, continuing that, building the network, and I'm in love with it. So there's going to be a lot more episodes and refining over time, and we'll go from there.
Well, listen, Tom, it's been a pleasure having you, buddy. A few different, very interesting angles and topical stuff there, and it's been, I only known you a couple of weeks, but I'm hoping to be in Bali a lot more myself. So I hope we get to spend more time together, and I can pick your brains more.
We're happy to have you here, man. It's awesome.
Thanks,
Appreciate
buddy.
it, bro.
Thank you.
Thank you. That was great.
Thanks for tuning in to No Bollocks with Matt Haycox. Today's conversation was packed with actionable insights, and I'm super, super grateful that you joined us. Now, our community now boasts 160,000 downloads a month of this podcast, and that is a testament to entrepreneurs just like you who refuse to settle for mediocrity. So don't miss out. Subscribe now and gain exclusive access to the conversations that can transform your business and transform your life. Also, while you're at it, if you could visit www.matt-haycox.com or click the link in the show notes below, and please sign up to the No Bollocks newsletter. That's like the sister newsletter that lives with this podcast. Every week I send 2 emails, and in just 10 minutes you're going to gain more knowledge than most people do in a 3-year MBA. So please subscribe, rate, share this episode with someone who needs a No Bollocks boost. And until next time, keep hustling and keep winning.